Welcome, good people. We're supposed to be live at the moment. Today I'm going to want to talk about the Q&A of November. Oops, sorry. There we go with all the sounds and all that. Of November of the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company, and the fact that they've tried their very best.
Hello and welcome to Q&A.
Oh, for fuck's sake, come on. It doesn't work today. There you go. Technical difficulties and all that. Hi there, Richard. But today we're going to talk about the Australian Broadcasting Company flagship Q&A thingy. They had one about feminism in November in 2019. And certain things were said. We have seen people making videos all over the interwebs where people complain about certain things that are being said, but they've missed a lot out. In all fairness, having seen what I have seen, I've decided to make today's stream about this Q&A because it's scary that stuff like this is allowed. Now, I have to admit, I had to do a little bit of trouble digging it up because ABC, in all its wisdoms, after a lot of people have complained, decided to take it off the interwebs. But thank God there was this one feminist who felt that, oh no, she did a great job. So she left it on her channel as being a live stream, which is all good and well. So now I have it too. And thank you for that, Mona. Mona something. She's the red-haired Egyptian in the thingy we will see. Well, there's not a lot of people right now, so I'm not quite sure if I should start right off or if I should give people a little bit of time to come and join us. But yeah, then again, how long do you wait for people to join us? That's a good question, I think. Let me first try this, give everyone a reminder via, what's it called? Discord. So, let's see if that'll help. Oh, what the hell? Come on. Yeah, go on. So, there you go. So, yeah, no, technical difficulties time is behind us. Most of the technical difficulties we already had. Currently, we should have a massive 3 people. Well, that's actually not true because one of those people is me, so we should have a massive 2 people viewing. And we're going to talk about the Q&A that ABC took off of their internet presence because, let's be honest, it is pretty vile. How vile is it? Well, let's see how far we can get. By the way, if the stream suddenly seems to drop out, it's not because I stopped. I'll just let you know right ahead. My internet seems very stable at the moment. I have no reason to assume it won't be. So, here we go. Let's have a listen at these Q&A people.
Hey, I'm Frank Kelly.
Oh, I probably would want to make you see it as well, shouldn't I? Yeah.
And tonight we're in Melbourne collaborating with the Wheeler Centre's Broadside Festival. On our panel, anti-ageism author Ashton Applewhite, Egyptian-American feminist Mona El-Tahawi, businesswoman and social change agent Hannah Asafiri, Indigenous screenwriter and activist Nayuka Gori, and Jess Hill, whose latest work is challenging old assumptions about male violence. Please welcome our panel.
Have you seen the beautiful diversity of this whole group? And let's be honest, it's not all white women, because there's an Egyptian and an Indigenous Australian there. Are you allowed to say Aboriginal? Well, on this channel you're allowed to say Aboriginal, so there you have it. Makes it easy for me. So yeah, no, white women, white woman, Egyptian, white woman, Aboriginal, white woman. What could possibly go wrong with such a diverse setup? Let us see.
Q&A is coming to you live across Eastern Australia on ABC TV and across the nation on iView and News Radio.
And now it comes to you over SOT streams.
And our first question tonight comes from Nisha Kott.
The interim report of the Royal Commission into Aged Care has damned Australia's system as inhumane, abusive and unjustified. Yet there seems to be very little attention paid to these findings. Do we as a nation care more about parties, hats and frocks than we do about our elderly?
Okay, before I let the people of Q&A answer this one, yeah, so there is age discrimination in Australia, and somehow people go on with their daily life and they don't care too much. Can you blame the Australian people? Because let's be honest, if ever there was a reason to create victims, you just know that there's plenty of researchers in the grievance study department that will find it. So yeah, is there a thing called age discrimination? Yeah, sure, but let's be honest. And hi there, Anxious. I tried to reach you before going live, but there you go. Haven't you checked your Discord? Anyway, so basically, here we have a woman saying, well, I mean, the elderly or people of age are being discriminated against, but people still go to have their normal life. How dare they? Let's see the beauty of the response from these great, what do you call them?
Thank you very much. And I think that was a reference to what's going on at the moment with the Melbourne Cup tomorrow. So let's bring in an Australian on this one. Hannah, what do you think? We care more about parties and frocks at the Melbourne Cup than we do about our older Australians?
No, it's not that people care more about this than old Australians. They care more about the Melbourne Cup than pretend problems facing Australians. Hi there, Paulo Costa, by the way. Welcome and nice of you to join us too. If any one of you, by the way, wants to join in the Hangout, you are welcome. Just let me know and I'll send you the Hangout link. But for now, I'll continue onward. Oh yeah, we're talking about, are people of age being discriminated against?
Well, I think, the findings are horrific and they weren't any surprise given when they first came to light with the ABC report, and they are horrific. But I think they are symptomatic of our attitudes towards minorities.
Aha! So you heard it here, people. When we're talking about are people of age being discriminated against, then, well, yeah, but only because we also discriminate minorities, which is obviously far bigger a problem. Really? Just the minorities then?
It's not just attitudes towards the elderly.
So it's not just attitudes toward the elderly. You heard it, people. Pay attention. It's pretty silly, don't you think?
I think as a country we have positioned minorities in competition with a whole host of other issues. So I think aged care and the abuses of aged care have become a consequence of how we view minorities, how at best we are indifferent to them, and at worst we are hostile to minorities.
So we're hostile to minorities because we don't care enough about aged care, though one could argue that minorities and aged care are two different groups that have 100% overlap, because let's be honest, you have old white people, but you also have old colored people. And funny enough, the world is divided in two groups, basically, old white and old colored in this. I mean, I probably think it's going to be three groups. Old white men, old white women, old colored people, either man or woman, I assume. But let's continue.
All minorities, including women, disabled groups.
All right. See, I wasn't that far off. All minorities, including women. More than 50% of the world is women. Less than 50% of the world is men. I'm not quite sure how women are a minority, but... And the disabled. And indeed, Richard, what about the elderly people of color? Well, I mean, they'll be covered twice, won't they? I mean, once because they're elderly, and then second because they're of color. And disabled. Define disabled. This is also a funny thing, because, let's be honest, when are you disabled? Well, officially, you're disabled when you need something to help you perform normally. In this case, this woman is clearly disabled. Well, obviously because she's a feminist, but no, seriously though, she has glasses. Glasses means your eyes aren't good enough. Do glasses help? Yeah, sure they help. But that still means that without glasses, she won't be able to see as well. Therefore, she is disabled. Is she now a double minority as well? Or am I going too far on this one? I probably am. Let's continue.
Queer community, Muslims, and for me this is part of that conversation that we need to have, although specifically we need to look at what's happening in aged care.
Yeah, Ashton, ageism is a big part of your work really, and your thought. Do you think it is separate to the other isms in a way?
Well, it's paradoxical in that aging, is the one universal human experience.
Do you think ageism is a different ism than all of the other isms? Well, I think it's paradoxical, because ageism is the one thing that happens to anyone. Well, wouldn't that then basically mean it's different? Why can't these people ever give a clear answer?
And older people, are a minority of the population. Ageism, I should say, is any judgment on the basis of age. So young people, children, experience a lot of it too. A society that doesn't look after children is also ageist.
So, old people are a minority, but ageism happens in every line of age, even with young people. So are we then talking about how it's discriminatory for old people, but it's also discriminatory for young people? I'm wondering who's left that it's not being discriminated by age. Because, well, I mean, didn't we have everyone by saying old people and young people? I never heard of medium people. So yeah, interesting. Let's continue.
I think that we have, that it is indeed, I think Hannah's right, that it does represent how we treat people at the margins of society. I would say capitalism is probably the biggest driver, in that we don't respect people who don't contribute in conventional economic terms, which means children and retired people, even though they contribute in many ways that are harder to measure and often enable other people to contribute in conventional ways.
Okay.
Okay, so according to her, capitalism causes you to stop caring about the elderly and the kids. And I'm wondering, who the hell is she talking about? If not caring for the young is ageism, and not caring for the old is ageism, then everyone is equal in oppression. Indeed, Paulo. I remember hearing a story about a dictatorship regime where they went after the people who wore glasses because the government thought that they would be perceived as more intelligent. I think that happened in, I think it was in Cambodia. And it's too bad Toxic isn't here, because she knows quite a bit about that topic. I think Cambodia killed a quarter of all its people. So would lead people to overthrow the government. Yeah, no, yeah. Hi, Reinevasio. So, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about all these groups, but ageism is terrible, but at the same time, everyone is an age. And obviously feminism had to boil in, and the Muslims had to be mentioned, and every group has to be mentioned. But if every group is mentioned, how can you then talk about the minorities? I mean, no, I'm sorry, I can't make head nor tails of this. Am I really that hyperbolic when I say, my God, everyone is oppressed? And personally, I don't feel oppressed, so that's my problem. I'm too stupid to realize I'm oppressed, apparently. That's good to know. Nah, let's continue anyway.
What about, let's stick with the Australians for a minute, because the reference was sort of in reference to the Melbourne Cup, but we've also had this Royal Commission into aged care just handed down last week. And one of the findings from the Royal Commissioners was that the shocking state of our aged care sector, and it was described as sad and shocking and cruel and harmful, was it represented an ageist mindset. Jess, do you think we've got an ageist mindset in our society?
Yeah, and I think some of it is just that a lot of us are terrified of getting old. Right?
And I think there we have the crux of the matter. Is our society ageist? Yeah, because I really think a lot of us are terrified of getting old. You're talking about how people themselves feel things. So if I were to take this serious, this basically means I'm going to be mean to old people because I'm afraid of becoming old. How much sense does that on a scale of 1 to 10? And yeah, sure, negative numbers are allowed too. Yes, I'm anxious. I can understand that. This episode made you so cranky. They are such a hateful, selfish individuals. I only watched roughly half of it, and I've already thought that I could make easily 4 or 5 videos on the stupid things they say. It's kind of funny because the reason why I'm doing the whole thing is not because I like to talk too much, but we've seen a lot of clips in different YouTube channels, but those clips, even though people make it sound like they are the worst, they're not. I mean, seriously, here we have they're complaining about how ageism is a problem, and then here we have a woman who without problem is saying, yeah, well, yeah, we all have a problem with age because we don't want to get older. Yeah, but if that's the problem, then you are the problem. The vocal inflections everyone is using in that conversation, it's like everyone is trying to sound profound. Yeah, you noticed. It's true though, and it's kind of funny because they don't want to disagree with each other. So the more stupid the things they say, the more profound they're going to get. It'll happen in a moment. It will happen. Trust me.
Right, and so there's probably a bit of a sense when our own relatives get old. Some of us are upstanding children and we remain in their lives and we look after them, and others run for the hills. And I think sometimes we don't want to look because a lot of us feel complicit that we didn't look after our grandparents. Or I know personally I feel guilt about not necessarily being there for my own nonna when she started to go senile. It was something that I just couldn't accept, and I probably needed to turn a blind eye to it.
If there was adequate state support, you wouldn't feel you had to go it alone.
And there is the crux of the matter. So we have, I'm not sure if I'm showing my mouse, but the bint on the right, all the way on the far right, is talking about how, it's so hard. And, well, yeah, no, when my parents get old or when family members get old, yeah, you stop having contact because, yeah, it's difficult. And then you've got the bint on the left saying, well, yeah, but that's where government should help you. What the fuck? You're talking about family members who spent their life raising you. And then when it's time for someone to take care of them, to help them, the government needs to stand in? See, this is the mindset of these people. There's a problem, the government will fix it. Not the government has to fix it. No. The government will fix it. Or they should fix it. It's incredible. Let's see what you guys have to say. But looking after her grandma would have interfered with her career goals. And that's the problem. I run away from my grandparents because of capitalism, obviously, and because I want to do something else. But it's capitalism's fault. There's too much government interference already, and I agree with that. They force old people into homes whether they have family to care for them or not. This is different for different countries, but yeah, that does happen. So, and they're actually advocating for more people to be taken out of the home. Mind you, these are the same people that bring you the mindset of, well, if a child wants to become a girl and he's born a boy, then he should, and if parents won't let him, then the government should take over. None of them have said that, at least not in this clip. But the mindset comes from these people. They follow the same ideological doctrine. It's scary. But let's continue.
That's also true, and obviously, I guess that when we feel complicit in perhaps our own negligence, and you see this with the lack of men in the violence against women sector,
or the lack of women in the violence against men sector, or the lack of criminals in the violence against civilians sector. Anything else I can make up that makes me sound anything nearly as profound as her? Somehow, it's everyone else's fault. It's everyone else's responsibility. So why are you talking to me? Amazing.
Sometimes that means that we want to look away. And, when we think about things like animals, how many of us have buried a racehorse? Not many, We don't feel complicit in that. We can point a finger quite purely and say what a disgusting practice that is, and we don't want to be any part of it. But this disgusting practice of putting our old people in aged care homes and leaving them there to literally rot in some cases is something that a lot of us are complicit in.
Yeah, and there is a shocking statistic that came out in that aged care commission inquiry, which is that 40% of people within our aged care system don't get any visitors. Naoka, how did that strike you?
Okay, before the black fella is going to answer, and yes, I'm calling her black fella, she did. She calls herself a black fella. I'm going to go with that one. I don't care. I'm very open-minded like that. But here you go. We have people being put in old folks' home, and 40% of them are not receiving any visitors. Yeah, but how is that a fault of capitalism? How is that not a fault of entitlement? Well, obviously it's because of white male patriarchy and whatnot. But 40%, more than 40% of society is women. So that would mean that women are easily implicated as well. And that's assuming that the 40% that does go is 100% women. And let's be honest, it's not. Now, I'm not going to say it's all women's fault, because that's also utter crap. I'm going to say male-female has nothing to do with it. But that's not how they want to push it. But the worst part is these elderly people do not get contact from their families. People don't visit them. And they wanted to make a government thing about it. What's the government going to do? Force these people to go visit their parents? Or hire people to entertain these parents? Either way, I'm like, it seems like a bit of a problem. Shouldn't these parents themselves tell their kids, "Hoi, what about you visiting me once and again?" Shouldn't those children who are adults themselves, should they not have the feeling that, you know what, no, I should keep in contact? They are, after all, my parents. And don't get me wrong, my wife lives in the Netherlands. Her parents live in Poland, which is a problem for her, trust me. But she has regular contact with them. So, if that's possible, how come 40% of the elderly in Australia, and I'm pretty sure the numbers in the rest of the Western world won't differ that much, have problems keeping in touch with their family? Explain to me, well, obviously they're not going to explain to me, but how the hell is this anything to do with capitalism or the patriarchy or any of that nonsense? All those nonsense thingies, they're nothing but an excuse. Should our society do more for our elderly? Yeah, sure. Why don't we make that important? No, the government should do it. Oh, for fuck's sake. I was a 100-year-old lady who lived in an old log hut in the village I went to school in. The whole town kept an eye on her, cut her wood, etc. She would walk to the local pub for a black beer each day. Yeah, and then the day she doesn't come, everyone is up in arms because, hey, wait a second, what happened? That's what a caring society looks like. But that's not what the left wants. They don't want a caring society. They want an authoritarian society where the government decide what is and isn't acceptable. Yeah, we all do this. I mean, I'm not blaming them for it. We're all part of it. But to ask for more government in this, wow, that's... they probably have no offspring to visit them. Well, there is that. I've read rather a few articles on feminists complaining that feminism sold them out because they didn't have children when they could, and then when they, well, decided it was time, no one wanted to have children with them anymore, and then they died old and alone. Well, they didn't always die, because often they writ it before they died, obviously. But yeah, being alone as a woman is rather problematic. Anyway, let's continue to hear what the black fella has to say.
And the way we treat older people in our community, and as you compare that to people with, Indigenous Australians, for instance.
Yeah, well, I think, if I'm really honest, I think in Australia anyway, I think we're saying Australians, but I think if we're looking at who we're actually talking about, I don't really see that in my community. I think that we value older people in a very different way. And elders have a higher standing in our community. And while I'm talking, I should also acknowledge the country that we're all on and the country that we're all.
And we should acknowledge that this country was once owned by the Huputupupu, and before that the Willy Bibimdi, and God knows what else group we can consider to be part of the life of this country. It's funny enough though, when they talk about how they acknowledge the country and acknowledge the indigenous people, they only talk about the indigenous people before the white people. They never talk about the indigenous people that the other indigenous people pushed off the land. Now, I'm not sure if in Australia they had different indigenous people. Probably not. I don't know. It's come on, it's a counterculture. No, not counterculture. A counter-continent. Sorry, Terry Pratchett, I butchered it there. My bad. But yeah, so we have to recognize that the mayfly will only live a day, something like that. But don't you think it's funny that she's giving an answer, and then she stops herself giving an answer to virtue signal? Seriously, people, you're talking about a serious issue. Old people need care. Yeah, but we have to recognize the people that have died a long, long time ago. So, but I'm really grateful for that example, Ludicrous, because sorry, not Ludicrous, Anxious Oddie, because I know of stories like that. Obviously not enough, but it's good to see and hear that there are still people out there that try to help people. Anyway, let's continue with what she has to say.
Listening and watching on. Yeah, I think we treat older people in a more respectful way. I think, yeah, what we're seeing is also white culture. Yeah, I think different cultures have different ways.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mona?
Yeah, no, it's putting people into old folk homes is white culture. You know, the thing is, I would rather say it's not true, but it's partly true. The thing about it is that it is indeed Western civilization that started the concept of old folks' homes. Capitalism helped. The idea was that you would put people to a place where they could live the last days of their life in a positive way. They didn't have to worry about a lot of stuff. They wouldn't be alone, etc., etc., etc. What happened was that old people went to homes, and then the families clearly thought like, oh, okay, we're done, bye-bye. Is that a white problem? Well, no, it's not. How can I say it's not? Because we see the same thing happen with people of colors who do this to their families. This is the problem. It's a convenience thing. It's nothing to do with whatever skin color you would like to put on it. But, well, obviously you have to talk about skin color, and let's be honest, white men have to be the problem. Okay, so now this bint has the right to talk again. I mean, this woman isn't charged with hate crimes is well, let's be honest, I don't care about hate crimes, I don't care about speech crimes, but she is inciting for violence, and inciting to violence isn't free speech, in my humble opinion. Not a big deal, but still. Not in this particular moment, I think, but let's continue.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that too often the white experience, the white male experience generally, but the white experience overall, is taken as the default. And I think that the rest of us, those of us who are not white, those of us who are not able-bodied, those of us who are not men, those of us who are not those defaults, end up having to explain that this is not our experience. And I think, you know, when I look at my family in Egypt, when I look at, you know, it's very similar to what you're saying, that it's very rare, although it's some families, because they're split by migration and work abroad and stuff, it's still very rare, but I think it's really important for white people to acknowledge this as their problem and to begin learning from us.
It's
Okay.
also
Okay, I'm going to interrupt. White people need to learn from us. Her parents, by the way, both PhDs. She comes from a wealthy family in Egypt. She's 50 years old, so we have to learn from her. So she obviously considers herself not white. How well do you think old people have it in Egypt? Do you think old people would rather live in Egypt than in this situation, Australia? Yeah, don't put too much money on it. We all know you're going to win, and we all know they're never going to pay out. Because let's be honest, if Egyptians could go to England or Australia, like hell they would, and we all know it. Why? Because it's so much better. But hey, that's white man's fault, that is. See, that's the problem. You can't do right by these people, because when you do right, then it's natural that it's the way it is. And if it doesn't go the way they want, then they'll blame you for it, ignoring the fact that what they left behind is far worse. And Renovatio, you're correct. Let's try socialism again. It's not as if people got old on the socialism. It's quite annoying. Well, yes, 100% of them, they want to be in the West. This is the problem we're now facing in Europe, to be honest. And sorry, I need to blow my nose. Sorry about that. So yeah, there is that interesting conundrum that people prefer to ignore. Well, let's hear what she has to say, shall we?
We do also have a culture of just locking things away that we don't want to look at. So we do it with homelessness, we do it with people who are incarcerated, people with disabilities. If it's too inconvenient, we'll just shut people away. And I think, yeah, this is one of those things.
I think that's exactly.
And this is so fucking telling. This is projection, people. Because she's not talking about what our society does. She's talking about what she wants the society to do. Because government has to take care of it. I don't want to take care of it. Any one of us who has any family member with a disability knows that when they need, we're there. We try to be anyway. And they have friends that are there. Hell, Anxious gave a perfect example of an old woman that could rely on her society to help her. And we all know stories like that. Maybe not on the top of our head. But yeah, we all know stories like I know of at least 3 old people that I know that come to other people for help. They actually also go to non-family members for help, and they get that help because people want to help. But yeah, they ignore that because it doesn't fit their narrative. Funny enough, these bins all want it to be true. Why? Because it's true for them. And homelessness was easier to ignore when most of the homeless were men. Well, the funny thing is, Richard, most of the homeless still are men. But now they're also men of color, I guess. So now it's a real problem. Thing is, homelessness is always a problem. I've worked with homeless people. It's not an easy problem to solve because some of them actually do everything they can to remain homeless. It's something I had never thought possible, but I always thought these people were victims. Some of these people, well, they're victims still, but yeah. Yeah, now you get ads pointing out that 1 in 4 homeless people are women. Guess what the other 3 are? Yeah, but you're not to talk about those. This is somewhat infuriating. I noticed that it's getting me riled up. I'm pretty sure this is true for a lot of you. Let's continue though.
Exactly what the Commission has found. Okay, our next question is from Catherine Bevan.
Right. I'm a 62-year-old woman who works full-time, and I'm very fortunate to have a fabulous job. The covert ageism I experienced during some interviews before securing my current role was stressful, just to say the least. One person conducted a phone interview with me and had almost guaranteed me the job until I saw that he'd looked up my LinkedIn profile photo, and I never heard from him again.
And here's the funny thing. When you talk to someone, hey, you applying for a job, if they think age is an issue, they would have asked you. How do I know? Because I sometimes still apply for different jobs, for whatever reason. It's fun to do, I guess. It's a good thing to do if you have a job. Every once and again, look for different jobs. Not to solicit for them, not to actually go for a different job, but just to talk to these people. Oh, okay. Where are you working now? Oh, I'm doing that and that job. Okay. Well, when can you start? You know how good it feels when a total stranger tells you when can you start? I advise people, try to call out, try to talk with different companies to see if they want you, because it gives you a feeling that, you know what? Yeah, I have options. Anyway, this woman also has options. Actually, she has a job. But she's complaining because, say, they saw her photo. Well, I don't know what kind of photos they saw, but it's not because of her old age. I can tell you that. Because, hey, let's be honest. She's got a job. And what job and industry? I wouldn't hire her. She looks like a pushing wheelbarrow might give her a heart attack. Well, there you have it. And considering the way she looks, and it's unfair because now I'm generalizing, but I can gamble that this person as a colleague for me would be a problem for me, because she will feel entitled and she will feel victimized, and certain things are not true because it doesn't belong to her idea. I can see that happen with her. Let's be honest, she's being turned down because people saw a photo on the internet, according to her. Yeah, that must be true. Not that maybe they found someone better. Nothing to do with age. 43-year-old guy in Ireland called Conway. He died on the streets. The left used him as a poster child for the government. Housing failure. Turned out he was given 2 houses and sold both for drugs. Yeah, you see, that shit does happen. As I said, Renovatio, I worked with the homeless quite some while ago, 20 years ago now, a little bit more. But some of them actually are homeless by choice, and all the help in the world can't fix that for them because they don't care. And then, yeah, if they then get used as a poster child for a failing government, then I'm like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. Anyway, let's listen to what she has to say, shall we?
How do we convince employers that people who are older are great workers with so much to contribute?
Ashton, I think we filed that one straight to you.
Okay, I'm going to answer this one. You can't. I'm sorry. There is no monolith of older people. Not all older people are great people. The idea that this is at all feasible should be laughed out of the whole concept. But what we can say is, you know what? You should give older people a chance if you think they will fit within the company. And guess what? A lot of companies do. But yeah, we're not talking about the things that go right. We talk about the ones that feel victimized. And again, this woman started talking about how she has a job. And at the same time, she's talking about, I have a job. How can we make government make sure that we have a job? But you have a job. What do you want about?
You know, on the aged care point, I just want to point out that only 5% of the population is in aged care homes. Our fears are out of proportion. this issue of discrimination in the workforce is widespread. The evidence is everywhere that not a single negative stereotype about older workers is true. Less creative, less dependable, none of that is true.
Unless, of course, you're talking about an older feminist, because then all of a sudden some of those concepts become very real.
So, of course, what we want is our employers to judge employees not by what they look like, no matter what or who they sleep with, for that matter, or where they come from, but on the basis of their individual capacity. Age discrimination is illegal. It's important for people to call it out. That doesn't make it any easier for you to get your foot in the door, which is why I do what I do, which is to help develop a grassroots social movement like the women's movement, which changed the way we look at women in the world. Not enough, but it started to do it.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt her a little bit, because she's starting a grassroots movement, so we will look at old people in the same way as we look at women. Okay, fair enough. Sounds funny. But there are there are old men and old women. Are we supposed to look at old men as if they're old men? And should we then look at old women as they are old women and women? So they should have two boosts? One isn't enough? Or could it be that companies hire people based on what they think they need? Not on basis like, oh yeah, no, you're too old. I mean, I know, especially in my line of work, there are lots of jobs. And I'm pretty sure if this is true in the Netherlands, this is true in Australia too. There are plenty of jobs old people can do. There are plenty of jobs old people are doing. Hell, the example given in the audience, this woman is actually working. And still, old people need a boost to get a job. Why? I mean, sure, everyone could use help getting a job, but why specifically old people? Because let's be honest, again, the example we're coming from is an old woman having a job complaining about how she didn't get a different job. Oh, I'm surprised that they even let this air. Let's be honest, this is not good for the ABC.
Need to do that around the position of older people in society, because addressing ageism at its broadest level, which is between our own ears, and then how it plays out in the workforce, in our healthcare systems, and everywhere, that is where it has to begin, so that people can look at workers for the capacity, the individual capacities we bring to the job.
It's proving.
Okay, so remember, she gave a whole lot of things to think about. And one of them was, it's between our ears. Okay, let's take that into consideration before we start talking about what other people need to do. Because you know what? It's between our ears. Anyway, people, I am sorry. I need a fast bio break. I am solo today, so there is that. But I'll be back in a few seconds. Give me this, please. And there I am again. See, I am an old fart. Pretty soon I'll be walking in diapers. Maybe I should already. That way I wouldn't have to go to the toilet every, 45 to an hour. Anyway, hey there, dads. Long time no see, mate. Anyway, let's continue. Oh, wait a second. Maybe I should do this. There you go. Let's
Very
continue.
difficult to shift. I mean, I've seen government after government decide that they're going to try and do everything they can to get more older people employed, and they have subsidies, and it just doesn't seem to shift. Hannah, you employ people. Do you employ older people?
I absolutely do. And I think it's also important to look at the gendered nature of aged
Absolutely.
care. And when it comes to women, and women who have had their careers interrupted and then find themselves...
You know, I'm going to stop this because obviously we have to look at old people and then we have to look at the gender, especially women. I thought women was a sex, but there you have it. Because women have their career interrupted. Who interrupts these careers for women? Could it be that these women have a choice in the matter? Well, there you have it. Obviously, me saying that they have a choice is patriarchy and all that. Let's see where this brings us.
Needing to re-enter the workforce. So I'm somebody who speaks to responding to circuit breaking the cycle of disadvantage for women, whether they be escaping situations of violence or whether they be experiencing societal discrimination and or finding themselves in their third age needing to come back into the workforce. And coincidentally, the highest group of homelessness in this country are women over 50.
No. The highest group of homeless people are not women over 50. But it becomes easier if you subcategorize each group. Let's be honest, there are not more men over 50 that are homeless than women. Well, there probably are, let's be honest. But most men over 50 don't stay homeless that long. Either they die or they're no longer homeless. And the same is kind of true for women. But women tend to be homeless whilst living at someone else's shack. This is not a luxury men have. So yeah, no, in Australia, women over 50 are the largest group of homeless people. And if you believe that, I have a bridge I want to sell you. Oh, damn it. Wrong button. I'm really this annoyed at the moment. See me. I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. Good on me. There we go. But let's listen to what they have to say.
So yes, I employ them as a matter of course, but I think what we need to do is look at why that is and why women's work is not recognised, and how do we train women up so that they do and can be re-engaged inside work.
Our next
Is women's work not being recognised? Here we have a panel of 6 women. 6. Not one of them is a man. Does that have to be a man? No, I don't care. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But here we have 6 women living off talking about how they are victimized, which kind of means that they have a job, doesn't it? They have a job. How can they talk about... Well, but it's obviously... women have it worse than men because it's hard for women to get a job. You have a job. Most women that want to work can work. Don't get me wrong, most men that want to work can work too. Here's the kicker though. Most women that do not want to work can choose not to work. Most men that do not want to work do not have the same choice. Funny how that goes. Well, in the end they can stay unemployed, but when that happens to a man, society looks differently at him than when that happens to a woman, let's be honest. I mean, everyone has heard about deadbeat dads because dad doesn't work, but very few people talk about deadbeat mum when mum doesn't work. Don't get me wrong, I agree with that. I think a woman should be at home to raise the kids. But isn't there, how do you call that? A double standard? Anyway, and are looked down on more than a woman. Yes, men are definitely looked down upon more than women. The social justice left here in Ireland now call young women between 18 and 30, not men though, who live at home, hidden homeless, and have added them to the homeless statistics. Yes, that's what I mean. Women living at their parents' house or living at someone else's house, shacking in a room, not even because they have a relationship, just because they have a roof over their head, are considered homeless because they don't have their own home. That doesn't happen to men, though. If the panel had just one man, then nothing that the female panelist would be noticed. Something that a feminist would say. Yeah, probably. Anyway, let's continue with this madness, shall we?
Question, it's a video from Belinda Day from Echuca in Victoria.
Oh, this is really funny. Sorry,
Our mum, Tanya Day, died in custody because Victoria Police targeted her for being drunk in public.
Okay,
They then failed to properly care for her after they locked her up in a police cell.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting it. This is not nice of me because I said it's really funny. But, here we go. Her mum died in a police cell because she got basically taken down for drunk and disorderly. But there's nothing her mum could have done to prevent this. Seriously? Is anyone taking this serious? Oh, no, yeah, well, it's terrible that her mum died, don't get me wrong. I don't think anyone should die in a police cell. But, did she have any health issues? Why the hell was she drunk and disorderly? What does that mean? Was she throwing around chairs, for example? Could be.
In all Australian legal history, no police officer has ever been held criminally responsible for an Aboriginal person's death in custody.
So, police officers have been held responsible for people dying in custody, but according to this woman, never because of an Aboriginal person dying in custody. Now, I'm not Australian. I haven't looked into this. I could be very wrong in what I'm going to say next, but you don't always investigate the things that are clearly beyond reproach. So if they can say, yeah, no, you know what, this nothing the police could have done, then yeah, they're not going to investigate it. Could that be the case? So yeah, there is that. I rent, so it's not my home. I totally identify as a young woman. I'm bloody homeless, I tell you. Sorry to hear that, Ray Devazio. Don't forget to turn up the heating though, because it's going to be cold tonight, I've been told. And drunk women are never disorderly. Well, apparently she was, because her mum got arrested for it. So, can you imagine how fucked up her behavior must have been before they arrested a woman for drunk and disorderly? I mean, I've not seen that happen often either. There you go.
Despite hundreds of Aboriginal people dying in their care. As Aboriginal...
Hundreds of Aboriginals die in the police care. Is that per year or in history? I'm curious. I seriously don't know these things. I haven't looked it up. Anitak, you know?
People, we know that racism was the cause of our mum's death and is the cause of so much pain and harm in this country. How do we get institutions to acknowledge racism, and how should people be held to account?
Now, should people be held to account? On that I'm going to be quite clear. Yeah, people should be held to account for the things they do. Not for the things people perceive them to do, for the things they do. There is some problems with indigenous and police in remoter areas, but in the major cities they are treated like every other minority. So basically they're handled with kid gloves. And catfights are the most dangerous ones out there. I've actually talked to a mate of mine who used to be a police officer, and indeed, if two guys were fighting, it was easy to fix. But if two women were fighting, there were like at least 10 people around it wanting the fight to continue, and most of these people were women too, funny enough. Sorry. There are remote communities, emergency services that won't go without police escort as they are so violent. Oh, you mean the Aboriginals are so violent? Now that's something I did hear a lot. Domestic violence in the Aboriginal communities in Australia is beyond stupid. I mean, nothing in the Western world compares to domestic violence in the Aboriginal world, I've been told, it's really violent. What about areas where these minorities are a majority? Yeah, there is that.
Nayuka, it's a big and it's a key question, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really difficult. I think when we're talking about institutions like police, I think it's really tempting to think about how can we make the police nicer? Should we hire more black people? Should we have more women? But what we need to remember is that the police started, like its very formation was to serve the interests of white sovereignty in this country. So
no, the police didn't start to serve white sovereignty in that country. The police started to try and maintain order within society. If it were just about white sovereignty, why would there be police in white-dominated areas? Because let's be honest, if it's all white there anyway, then they don't need police, but they still have it. So, no, you're wrong. But indeed, it's the colonials' fault, apparently. Anxious Aussie, she kind of does go there. Aborigines are far higher risk of assault from other Aborigines than white people. Yep, that is true, guys. That's something I do remember having read. Nayuka says white men can only be on her team if they are race traitors who are working on themselves. And I think therein lies kind of the problem, because everyone needs to be an ally of the people of color nowadays. But the biggest minority in the world is white people. Just putting it out there. And I don't think we should judge people on their skin colors. I agree with Martin Luther King on that one. But somehow it always needs to come back to the white man's fault. Have you paid penance already, brother?
I don't know if we're talking about accountability. I don't know how far we can go in keeping an organisation like the police to account, because it is there to be violent. It is patriarchal.
So the police is there to be violent and to be patriarchal. Nothing to do with protecting, nothing to do with trying to prevent crime. Nothing at all.
And it is overwhelmingly white. So how do we...
This is kind of funny though. In a country that's overwhelmingly white, the police force, which hires people from said country, will then be overwhelmingly white. What is it they don't understand about populations? Now, should you have more Aboriginal police officers in areas that are predominantly Aboriginal? Yeah, sure. Do you have that? Well, you have a few, not a lot. Why not? Should have played a drinking game and had a shot anytime these women say white. Yeah, no, I can't do that because there's no way I'm going to finish the stream then. Shit, I would have been wasted already. And we've only been busy for less than an hour. The domestic violence is terrible, and fear of being accused of racism leave a lot of Aboriginal kids in abusive situations. See, I heard about that because I remember reading not too long ago an article about how children were taken out of Aboriginal homes, and people are now calling it that was neocolonialism. But at the time they did this to prevent these children from growing up in domestic violence. Because most of the domestic violence in Aborigine homes were, well, not just against the parents, but also against the kids. And they wanted to give these kids a good chance, so they took the kids out and put them with white parents. Which is indeed somewhat questionable, I'll grant that. But they did it in good intent. Then again, the road to hell is also paved with good intentions, so there is that. I love that when Black Lives Matter removed all references to Martin Luther King from their official website. When questioned, they claimed his belief didn't necessarily align with the modern day civil rights movements. There you have it. Because it's not about being equal, it's about being superior. It's about causing other people to have to force them and have to listen to you. Because how dare you? Don't you see I'm oppressed? You have to listen to me. You have to do what I say because I'm oppressed. Yeah, but isn't that then you talking out of a position of power? No, you have the power. Therefore, you have to do what I say. The hypocrisy, the double standard in these people is so palpable. It's amazing that they don't recognize it themselves. But then again, I like the drinking game where you take a shot every time one of the honey badgers says a responsibility. Yeah, fair enough. Probably won't live long through that one either, let's be honest.
I think it shouldn't exist. But
Wait, I nearly forgot that. It's the police, and she thinks it shouldn't exist. So, for all you Aussies out there, you could try to get your police to be removed because feminism says it's a good idea. Now, all of you must have seen at least once the clip where Mona, the redhead, talked about how she is in favor of killing men to prevent rape. Mind you, she's not in favor of killing rapists. She's in favor of killing men to prevent rape. So yeah, thought crimes and all that. Which is also possible because this Bint is talking about how she feels that the police should be gone. Imagine living in Melbourne without the police. Oh, well, yeah. That's not a big step to imagine that. Was it? I'm not sure if it's Melbourne. Where was it that they have all these African gang fights? I can't remember if that's Melbourne or whether that was Sydney or whether that was, what's the other one, the big city? I remember Avi Yemeni making several videos on it. And yes, Gori just culturally appropriated niggas with an attitude. Yeah, youth crimes indeed. Anyway, let's continue. Let's get rid of the cops. That should help a lot.
But how do we do it? Let's talk about that because we're nearly 30 years since we had a Royal Commission to black deaths in custody.
Yeah.
One of the key things they found was that public drunkenness should no longer be a criminal offence, and it has.
So public drunkenness shouldn't be a criminal offence, not because it shouldn't be a criminal offence, but because a lot of the drunks drink so much they actually die from alcohol poisoning, and if they're not incarcerated, well, it's not the police doing it. But they'll still die, won't they? Because that's the thing with alcohol poisoning. It is still deadly.
Doesn't change. So if Royal Commissions aren't doing it, so how do we make this change? And are things changing? Because this is the first inquest, this one into Tanya Day's death, to formally consider systemic racism as a contributing factor. Is that a sign of improvement?
Here's the thing. She doesn't want to say no, because it clearly is. But she doesn't want to say yes, because she clearly doesn't want the police. People like that, seriously. Why do these people get a platform? Fucking hell. Anyway, another stream you might do could be about university instructors who advance the idea of mandatory castration of 25% of the infants in male populations. Yeah, I've seen that clip. But it's Spanish, Portuguese. I think it was Spanish, and my Spanish is terrible. English I can manage, barely. But Spanish is not going to happen. And they don't arrest everyone who gets drunk. They arrest aggressive drunks mostly. Yeah, not even all aggressive drunks. But yeah, you have to fuck up big time before you get arrested, especially in Australia. But anyway, let's continue.
It's like how incremental, like what... I'm wary of talking about Auntie Tanya Day's family. I think they ultimately decide what justice is for their mum.
Yeah, because let's be honest, we're not allowed to say, yeah, maybe she shouldn't have been a belligerent drunk. So let's pretend that it's the police's fault.
Decide like in all of these discussions, we should be centering the family and what they want. But as an observer in the community and being on the outside, but also being a black fella,
See, I did tell you she called herself a black fella. So I'm just doing a favor. I'm calling her a black fella too. It's not because I want to be offensive or anything. She calls herself a black fella. I call her a black fella. See? How progressive am I? And thank you for the offer, Paolo. That's definitely something that we could look into. Or you could look for a subtitled version. Yes, Richard. Thank you. That would be nice too. We're not kidding, Anxious Aussie. There is a clip out there of a Spanish professor, and I can't remember what the class he was giving. She was actually talking about how 25% of society should be neutered. Sorry, 25% of male society should be neutered. Yeah, well, it's men, so what human rights, eh? Women have human rights. Men are expendable. They've always been expendable, so nothing new there.
I think having police investigate themselves is not a way. I can't see how accountability can come from that, and that still happens, and that's always happened. So I don't know.
Mona, how do we get institutions to, acknowledge racism and do something about it? How do we hold people to account?
So, how do we get things like people and corporations and organizations, how do we get these people to acknowledge racism? And part of the question that wasn't asked, is she then also allowed to point out there is this thing called racism against white people? Because there is no anti-racism or reversed racism. There's racism. Talking about the negativities of one ethnicity, because we're all the same race, stupid fucking communistic word, and they all fall for it, but there you go. We're all the same race, but let's pretend we're not. Then it's still true for everyone. If you're going to say you're bad because you're a white man, you're a racist. If you're going to say you're bad because you did this and that wrong, then okay, you have an argument. You'd still be wrong, don't get me wrong, but you have an argument. There is no argument because you're a racist. You blame people are bad because of their ethnicity. That's the very definition of racist. Anyway, if they arrest all Irish people who got drunk on the streets, yes, that would be an interesting situation. 28 days after would be filmed in Dublin and no one would notice. Oh, anyway. Black fella, yeah, race. My mob, tribe, elders, and not necessarily related. Thank you for the clarification, Anxious.
Well, you're asking the person here who travels the world to say fuck the patriarchy. So
Yeah, because the patriarchy is a problem. And she's a woman. And what do women do with problems? They fuck them. Now, this is a funny little anecdote. But during the Second World War in the Netherlands, there were women that started relationship with German soldiers. So, is that how they would fuck a problem? Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking badly about these women. I mean, women tend to try to align themselves with whomever is in power. This is the whole idea of, I can't remember the name now. This is also why women marry up. Why women, if they earn more than their men, they tend not to marry that man or not stay with that man. Hypergamy, that's the word. Women do this because it's biologically ingrained in them, because it's all about survival and all that. It's not even something you can blame women for. It's natural. And yeah, this woman just took to the next level. She wants to fuck the patriarchy because that's basically the biggest dog in the pack, apparently. I just dropped the link to the subtitled video in your Discord. Thank you, Richard. I will look into it soonish. I will look into it though. How did she get let in? McGuinness, Milo, they were all refused. Yeah, because they spoke against the left. They didn't call for violence. They didn't call out that the police were bad. But they did say feminism is bad. This woman is very much in favor of feminism. She just wants to kill everyone else. The police is useless and white men are useless. But yeah, at least she's positive about feminism. Yeah. And indeed, this woman had said to kill all men way before she applied to be let in to Australia. It is quite annoying, isn't it? The double standard that the left is pushing on our society. It's a really hard time that more political parties stand up against this bullshit. But then again, that'll take forever. Anyway, I think I have seen more intelligent conversation on episodes of the Teletubbies. High five. Richard, you just won the internet, mate. Oh, bloody hell, that was brilliant.
I think that what we have to do is start seriously talking about dismantling patriarchy. And when I talk about patriarchy, I'm talking about a white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist patriarchy, to quote black American feminist Bell Hooks.
Yeah, because Bell Hooks is such a brilliant person. Oh my God. Intersectionality, basically, Bell Hooks is an intersectional feminist, which basically means that it's true because I say so, and I say so because I think it's true, and you can't argue with me because obviously I have more victim points than you, therefore you must automatically be wrong. Hell, I can't be right on any of these things because I am a white man. Yeah, these sort of people. Seriously though, she comes from a country where she will actually get attacked by local law enforcement because of her potty mouth. And don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of her being attacked by the police. But she gets attacked by the police in Egypt because of the things she says. And she's walking free in the Western world, and somehow it's white man's fault. I'm not sure, but I don't think there's lots of white men in power in Egypt. I could be wrong though, mind you. And it's not a great example of capitalism either. Sometimes the hypocrisy of these people, seriously.
Because what I'm hearing here is very similar to what's happening in the United States. But I also urge everyone to connect it to what so often in the news is portrayed as a problem in my country of birth, Egypt.
She's going to bring up Egypt. Oh, she would be so much trouble in Egypt right now. But never mind, continue.
Where police brutality is connected to a fascist state or a militarist state. And so it's very...
Or an Islamic state.
Easy for people to say, oh look, well, you know, the police beat Mona up in Egypt because, you know, Egypt is a dictatorship. And you rarely make that connection between the dictatorship in Egypt and here in Australia where you're ostensibly a democracy.
Okay, hands up. Guys, please. No, not hands because you can't. Everyone who thinks that she's been attacked by the police in Australia, please X up in chat. Because I'm curious. And I'm going to give it... Yeah, I don't know how long you want me to take it because I don't think anyone believes that she's been attacked by the police in Australia. But she has been attacked by the police in Egypt. So, Australia, which is a white capitalistic patriarchy country, and Egypt, which is none of those things, and she's attacked by the police in Egypt, and she's blaming the white men in Australia and in America. Anyone who wants to shoot her in the face right now, I cannot agree. Don't do it. I'm against violence, but I understand the sentiment.
But what you're talking about is the overwhelming power of the state. And that state is driven by a white supremacist patriarchy. When I look at your Prime Minister, when I look at Donald Trump, when I look at Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Egypt.
I'm sorry. What was his name again? I'll see if I can put it back a little bit. Let me see.
Here in Australia, where you're ostensibly a democracy, but what you're talking about is the overwhelming
the name
power
of
of
that
the state.
other
and that
white
state
guy
is driven by a white supremacist patriarchy. When I look at your Prime Minister, when I look at Donald Trump, when I look at Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Egypt.
Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Yeah, that's a white name for you. And he's in the same line as Donald Trump and the President of Australia. I forgot his name. Can't care, to be honest. All three of them are vastly different. And none of them, well, the one in Egypt is a little bit authoritarian, but none of them are authoritarians. I mean, in none of the countries you're not allowed to talk or go against the regime, which is, let's be honest, the mainstay of a totalitarian state. Yes, they don't use violence with African gangs in Melbourne. They should, trust me. Making Egypt great again. Well, she is a mega. Though the second word I was thinking about could also be a description of a female dog. But that's not nice of me.
When I look at Bolsonaro, all of these men are...
Ooh, Bolsonaro, another white supremacist. But are Latinos white? Well, Hispanics aren't considered white. So are Italians considered white? Because they usually are darker in skin color. Well, yeah, let's call them all white because they're men, aren't they? Oh.
Patriarchal authoritarians. At the heart of the way that they rule is violence. And that violence depends, the violence is meted out to you depending on where in the hierarchy you belong. And so, if you're a woman, if you're queer, if you're of color, if you're disabled, etc., etc. So for me, I say patriarchy is like an octopus.
Oh, this is so funny. I'm going to stop here because she's going to talk about what she thinks patriarchy is. And, well, obviously she's the one defining it because no one else has been able to prove patriarchy. And how many mental health hospitals are there in Egypt? Well, considering this poor bint, I would say one too few. At least one too few. So what is she saying is, yes, lobsters. But you didn't have a lobster, you have a crab there. Well, then again, it's a woman. Crabs, fair enough. The women with crabs. If we were a fascist dictatorship, would she be given an hour on the state broadcaster to call for revolution? Hell no. Yeah, octopus, that's better.
Head of the octopus is misogyny. But the 8 tentacles are
the
these things that
head
we're talking about.
is
so
misogyny.
It would be capitalism, it would be police brutality, it would be homophobia.
And I had to stop here. This made me laugh and cringe at the same time. So, we've got misogyny, that's the head, and one of the tentacles is homophobia. But let's say that roughly half of the gay people in the world are male and the other one are female. But most non-homosexual males don't really have a problem with female homosexuals. So it's misogyny for heterosexual men to have a problem with with gay men, and that's misogyny. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. And indeed, Hail Hydra. Oh, sorry.
All of these systems of oppression that privilege male dominance, because we're talking about a very specifically male kind of violence, and again, according to the tentacles of the patriarchy. So for me, we have to have a serious discussion. We have to dismantle patriarchy.
We have to have a serious discussion to dismantle something that I can't prove actually exists because of the violence that is being caused by the one thing I really can't prove exists. And yes, I should have a better prescription because my needs aren't being filled. Is that what you're saying, Mona? Seems that way to me. Don't octopus's arms grow back if you cut them off? See, I don't know that. I don't know if they grow back. I think so. I know a starfish grows back its arm when it loses one. Well, it's not really an arm. It's point. And feminism and gay men are no longer friends, Richard Breyer. Haven't you noticed? Feminists don't like gay men anymore. I think Milo Yiannopoulos may have something to do with that as well. But no, a lot of gay men have fallen off of the whole feminism is good bandwagon because feminism threw them under the bus. And the British monarchy never even criminalized lesbianism, as the Queen believed it could never happen. The women literally had it better than the men. They never mentioned that though. Indeed, renovatio. That's the funny thing. But then again, and I'm ashamed to say that John isn't with us today. I'm sorry to say, not ashamed. I'm sorry to say that, because John did tell me something not too long ago that since I think 1840, it is provable that women have more protection by law in Great Britain than men do. And still they claim women are oppressed. So yeah, there is that. But yeah, being a male gay person was... you could go to jail for that. Then again, in Egypt you could be thrown off a roof for that, so... There you go.
That sound like a pipe dream. It has to be a reality, because it's the...
It has to be a reality. Not it is a reality. It has to be a reality. She doesn't even believe it herself. She's pushing it though.
Year 2019, for those of us who use that calendar.
Yes, people, it's current year.
And we're still talking about people being beaten to death by the police. It's unconscionable.
I think
Okay, why are these people being beaten to death by the police? Where is this happening mostly? Many people being beaten to death by the police in Egypt? Well, rather a few. How is that in Australia? Because I'm not from Australia, obviously. A lot of people in Australia being beaten to death by the cops. I can't remember any of the stories on that, but yeah, it must be dreadful. I think Australia isn't that bad as Egypt, though. Yeah, you saw him too, right? There was another guy who was like, he was kind of like a soy when he realized he was being watched at, and he was like, "Oh, look, I'm on television." But yeah, no. And I don't know why it is calendar related, but don't they always do that? Isn't that this is where the whole "it's current year" meme came from. They keep doing that. It's always, well, it's now 2015. We can't have, it's now 2016. We can't have, it's now 2019. We can't have. Well, apparently we can, because if you're correct, then we have it. Therefore, it is there. The proves we shouldn't have is a better frame, I guess. Anyway, no, but seriously though, how many people are being clubbed to death by the police in Western countries? I mean, I know it happens in China. I know it happens in Saudi Arabia. I know it happens in Egypt. But I can't remember it happening for a while in the Western world. Well, that's the thing though. The ABC is actually vetting the audience. And they should, because no way they get away with this bullshit if there's people in the audience with half a brain cell. But yeah, there is that. With the intersectionality, it's like police arrest Aboriginals, therefore the country is homophobic and Islamophobic. Yep, there you have it, Paolo. You will notice the live tweets. There is a competition to... what's Airway? Rewrite? I don't know. They needed a man in the audience to give the panel legitimacy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that one, Richard. The Irish police would never club you to death. Too much effort. They damn us pray. Well, I'm sorry, Renee. Oh, good one though. The riot police in France have to get into work really early to beat the crowds. But unfortunately they do, and they do beat the crowds. So yeah, France is a good example of a Western country where the police is actually being way too violent. But then again, most of that violence is towards white men, so there is that. Well, one could argue, oh, right wing, yeah.
Also, if I can just jump in, I think, like, yes, let's talk about patriarchy, but if we're talking about a settler colonial state like Australia, we need to question where that patriarchy comes from, and colonialism is...
White supremacy.
Yeah, well...
Well, colonialism is white supremacy. I'm really curious how well Australia would have done by now if the white people never went to Australia. I remember reading that when Thomas Cook and his ilk started going to Australia and New Zealand and all that, well, New Zealand is slightly different, but especially Australia, people lived in holes in the ground, not in caves, not in dug holes with a roof. No, holes in the ground. It's like if the rain would fall, it would fall on them. It doesn't rain a lot, but that's a different story. I think you'd be happy with the colonial powers coming through the Australian continent. Let's be honest, there wouldn't have been a Melbourne if it weren't for the English. You wouldn't have been sat there on television if it weren't for the English. What are you complaining about? Never mind that, I'll continue with this story.
But particularly also, like, it's not just racism and white supremacy, it is also wanting to disappear Indigenous people and, you know, not our sovereignty not be upheld. I think the danger, and I think Queensland Police is a really good example, where when we kind of zone in on one particular police officer, say Chris Hurley up in Queensland, we have this, I think we've got a bit of a culture of being able to, you know, we want to pin it on one person and just say, oh, you know, it's one bad guy or it's a couple of bad apples. But if we're thinking about the police or we're thinking about institutions, we have to understand that it's a cultural issue, it is a systemic issue. And beyond the police, it's not just the police, we also have, say, institutions like the healthcare system. I'm thinking of Naomi Williams up in New South Wales, where she...
Seriously? Can we complain about everything the government does for us? Yeah, of course we can. Let's not be silly, because we would be so much better off without it. Really?
Died of something that should have been preventable. She went to the doctors 18 times, and like racism absolutely played a role in that.
Okay, she died for something, she went to the doctors 18 times. Therefore, racism played a role in it. I don't know. I haven't read it. I'm not going to deny it. I am not aware of the whole story. But did she go to the same doctor 18 times? Because if I go to a doctor and that doctor doesn't help me, I'm not going to the same doctor. I mean, the whole very definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again, awaiting a different result. Or she did get helped, but they couldn't help her. Because, let's be honest, doctors are doctors, not miracle workers. Anyway, as I said, I don't know nothing about this story, so let's continue on.
Entrenched racism is, you know, unquestionable. And if the question from Belinda was, how do we get them to acknowledge racism? Institutions, Jess, you've looked a lot at institutions in the work you're looking at. The police, you know, a key institution dealing with domestic violence. Police, address a domestic violence incident in this country once every 2 minutes. How do we get them to acknowledge and to change?
Or maybe it's not the police that needs to change. But hey, let's not make people responsible for their own behavior if we can blame it on someone else. Anyway, let me see what you guys have to get. The government is oppressive. We demand more government intervention. Indeed, Paolo, that's basically their story. Didn't one have eat a dick hippie written on something? I have no idea what that is. Sorry. I missed part of that story, I guess. I'm anxious. Ludicrous. The reason they want bigger government is that it gives them more to complain about to get them extra victim bucks. Yeah, that's not even wrong, to be honest. Apart from the aqueducts, the sanitation, the roads, irrigation, medicine, education, the wine, the public bath. It's kind of like, indeed, Renovatio, it's kind of like the joke from, I think it was The Life of Brian from Monty Python. Well, what did the Romans ever do for us, except for roads and safety and aqueducts and bathhouses and... Yeah, no, they did nothing for us. Nothing. Let me check on my phone what the internet says that you guys did wrong. Yeah. That phone, where did it come from? Internet, by the way. Oh, never mind. 18 different first visits to the 18 different doctors probably doesn't help getting diagnosed either. You are correct, Richard. You are correct. But fair is fair. We don't know the story. And, I mean... I can understand people dying after 18 visits to a doctor. I'm not saying it's impossible. Let's be honest, doctors aren't miracle workers. But anyway, we have bushfires destroying homes and people have died. We have domestic violence group wanting donations cause firefighters go home and lobby. And a lobby group wanting donations to stop the coal CO2. Firefighters go home and beat their wife. Yeah, obviously they do, because patriarchy and all that. We did hit 90 minutes. It's quite a bit longer. And you're a quarter of the way through the video. Are we having a 6-hour stream? No, we're not going to do a 6-hour stream. I think we're going to come back. We're going to revisit it. That is, if you guys would like me to. If not, then, well, obviously not. But if you think like, okay, this is a good idea, then yeah, sure, we can revisit it. You know what? I think maybe now is a good time to quit it then. 17 minutes in. Not a bad idea, really. We are... Yeah, if you guys want to, we can revisit it. And, I mean, we don't even have to wait till next Saturday. I'll probably be able to find another gap in the week. So yeah, there is that. It's an interesting storyline, though. I mean, I was planning on making a few videos on the whole topic myself. Each and every question that these people respond to give me an hour of video material merely to pull them back on the things they are saying. It's save the link to this video to Discord, please. I'm sorry, guys. The video I've been showing you isn't online. It's I have it on my computer, so that. But I can leave the link to the Hangout, today's Hangout on it, and if people want to have this video, let me know. I can give it to you. You will get the slightly altered version where you have stripes and all that, because I did that. To not automatically be demonetized. Anyway, Q&A did try to get rid of this, so the fact that I have it is probably not going to make Q&A happy. And you can only take so much Q&A at one time. Yes, it is true. And I really thought, I really did think this would be more than one video, though. Though I had expected to be a little bit further than we are now. We're now at 17 minutes. Let me write that down so I remember that for the next time when we start. If I can find a pen. So, but yeah, no. Either Wednesday or next Saturday. Or maybe someday in between. We can continue this one. And by the way, guys, if you want to take part, if you want to sit on this side of the stream, if you want to help talking some nonsense into it, let me know. I mean, it's not as if I have to do this on my own. You're welcome to join me. So next time we start at 17 minutes, which is very close to the next question, so that's funny enough. So yeah, there is that. We've been busy for 1.5 hours though. I watch a live stream called XYZ Live while Q&A is on. Okay. And yes, to get demonetized. Well, I was demonetized on my other channel. Modwayne used to be monetized. But, yeah. I didn't fall in lockstep. That's basically the problem. I haven't made it in a full episode. Well, I haven't yet either. Because I've watched this episode, you know, looking for talking points and whatnot. I've not even watched half of it. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I can do the whole thing. We did basically get up to question number 3. Almost to question number 3. So we did a little bit better than I thought I would do. But it's incredible. It's really incredible. And this is just me talking. Can you imagine if John were here, or if one of you guys were on this side as well, talking about this bullshit, then we probably wouldn't even gotten this far. The amount of vitriol, hypocrisy is amazing. Seriously amazing. I don't understand why people pay money to ABC anymore. I mean, if this is the bullshit they put out, it's amazing. Well, yes, everything bad they say in 1 hour vomit session. Yeah. But, well, that's how it is, I guess. So, am I right to assume that you guys would like to see the rest of this shit as well? Maybe I'll prepare it a little bit better, because, let's be honest, that 18 Doctor thing, I didn't know. So, yeah, there is that. Maybe I should have looked into some background info. Yeah, maybe I can still do that. So yeah, no, guys, if you want to, we can surely run that around. I mean, I would more than likely do it. Renovatio, you're in favor. If, by the way, if one of you wants to join in, then, you know, feel free to let me know that too. And it is frustrating, but in a funny way, though, isn't it? I mean, it's like a train wreck. You just can't look away. How did they get it down to 1 hour? Well, in this case, it's quite simple. They can get it down to 1 hour because none of them calls the other one out for the blatant bullshit they're dishing out. And they're like, oh, well, did you know seagulls can fly underwater? Yes, no, yeah. They don't do it often, but they can. I've heard about this. Oh, right. And did you know that they would flap their wings then? Oh, yeah. That's this discussion in a nutshell. The police is bad because bad police. Oh, okay. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting fun, to be honest. So, but yeah, okay, we can do part 2. We will do part 2. I can't tell you when, though. It's so frustrating. I mean, paying for it. Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand. I don't think it's a lot different than the English have with the BBC, to be honest. The British have with the BBC. It's somehow... It's somehow as if the BBC are the British broadcasting communists, and the ABC have now become the Australian broadcasting communists. So yeah, there you have it. And you don't get a choice. It's just unfortunately true. Hell, I pay for TV license in my country as well. I don't even have a TV. So there is that. But yeah, feel free to complain. Nothing going to change. Maybe I should go into politics. How cool would that be? Who knows? Anyway, people, for today, I think we call it quits. Unless someone has something that they would like to add. But if not, then that's alright too. And I would like to talk to Anxious Ozzy. Because we talked in the past about doing a rune stream. So yeah, maybe we should make a little clearer appointment on that. And yes, Cenk Uygur is going into politics, but he is and richer and more people know his stuff because YouTube is actually pushing him. So, hell, if I had half of the viewers that they had, that's quite amazing. Well, I will see you on Discord then. People, I'm not sure if you guys want to, but I'll let me see, where is it? I can drop the Hangout link so you can join me in the after stream if you want to. If I can find it, there you go. Obviously, it will be gone when eventually. We need to figure out a good whiteboard for you to draw on. Yeah, well, I think I have something fixed for that. But it's going to be drawing with a mouse, so there is that. Anyway, I'm going to drop the Hangout link for people who want to join in the after stream. You're more than welcome, as always. And then I'm going to say end stream. I'm going to give you a few minutes to copy the Google Hangout, and I'll see you in the Hangout. 1 second, guys. What is it?
Is it blocked?
Yeah.
No, it's just that it's really losing its attractiveness, Joe. You finish the stream like old Dutch people finishing conversation on the phone. They starting then.
Okay, for those of you who want to join the Hangout, you have enough time to do so. That means that I'm going to end the stream now, and I hope to see you all next time. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the fun. Bye-bye.